Black man harasses woman on train, then Robert Downey Jr. takes matters into his own hands. The train rattles along the tracks, its steel wheels grinding against the rails. Inside, passengers sit shoulder to shoulder, lost in their own worlds. Some stare at their phones, others gaze out the window as the city blurs past. The air is thick with the usual smells: coffee, old leather, and the faint scent of rain clinging to damp jackets. A low hum of conversation mixes with the mechanical clatter, creating a rhythm that feels almost hypnotic. Emily shifts in her seat, pressing herself slightly against the window. She's alone, her fingers gripping her phone a little too tightly. Her light blue sweater clings to her frame, and her hair, slightly damp from the rain, sticks to her face. She looks up, scanning the train car, as if searching for something or someone. The door slides open with a hiss at the next stop. A man steps in, tall, well-dressed, with a confidence that fills the space around him. He carries a black backpack over one shoulder, adjusting the strap as he scans the available seats. His eyes land on the empty spot beside Emily. Without hesitation, he walks over and sits down. Darnell settles in, exhaling as he places his bag on his lap. For a moment, he says nothing, just glances at the people around him. Then he turns his head slightly toward Emily. His voice is smooth, casual. He asks her something simple, like whether this train stops at a certain station. Emily answers quickly, barely looking at him. There's a pause. Then Darnell speaks again. His tone is light, but there's something about the way he leans in just a fraction closer. His voice lowers, his words carrying just a hint of something more than small talk. Emily tenses, shifting in her seat. She glances at the other passengers, but no one seems to notice. A few rows away, Robert Downey Jr. watches. His gaze sharpens behind his glasses. He doesn't move, doesn't say a word, but he sees it. The way Emily's fingers curl around the strap of her bag, the way her body leans slightly away. Welcome back to PlotTwister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. The train speeds forward, the air inside suddenly feeling heavier. Darnell's voice rises just a little, his words too low for anyone else to hear. Emily swallows, blinking rapidly. Robert places his book down. Something is happening. The train rocks gently as it speeds down the tracks. But inside, the air feels heavier. Emily shifts again, pressing her knees together, her fingers gripping the strap of her purse. Darnell leans in just a little more, his elbow resting on the seat behind her. His voice is still calm, but now there's something else in it. A confidence, a push. She glances around, but no one seems to be paying attention. A woman in front of her scrolls through her phone. A man across the aisle stares blankly at the window. The usual train silence, people minding their own business, keeping to themselves. Emily exhales sharply as if she's about to say something, but then stops. Darnell chuckles under his breath. He's not touching her. Not yet. But his presence is pressing in. His knee nudges against hers as the train shifts. Emily flinches, pulling back, but there's nowhere to go. Her seat is against the window, boxed in. Her breathing is shallow now, her fingers tightening. A few rows away, Robert Downey Jr. watches. He's seen enough. His head tilts slightly as he studies the way Emily's shoulders stiffen, the way she presses herself against the glass. He places his book down on the empty seat beside him. His jaw tenses. The train slows as it approaches the next station. For a moment, Emily looks toward the doors, as if considering whether she should get up and get out. But before she can move, Darnell speaks again. His voice is low, smooth, but there's a sharpness to it now. Emily's lips part, but she doesn't respond. Her eyes dart to the other passengers, to the doors, to anywhere but him. Darnell smirks, shaking his head slightly, as if amused by her discomfort. He shifts, stretching his arms out along the back of the seat, closer now. Robert exhales through his nose, slowly. He stands up. The movement is quiet, but it carries weight. People nearby glance up, noticing him for the first time. He steps forward, his eyes locked on the scene in front of him. Darnell doesn't look up at first, but Emily does. Relief flickers in her eyes, just for a second. Robert stops beside them. His voice is steady, firm, but not loud. Everything in the train car changes. Robert stands still, his hand resting lightly on the top of the seat in front of him. The train hums beneath their feet, but inside the car the atmosphere shifts. A few passengers glance up, sensing the change. Emily looks at him, her eyes wide, almost pleading. Darnell finally notices, turning his head just slightly, his smirk unwavering. Robert's voice is calm, steady. He doesn't raise it, doesn't make a scene, but there's something in his tone that makes people listen. Darnell leans back a little, his smirk faltering for just a second. Emily exhales, her shoulders sinking as if the weight pressing down on her has lifted, if only slightly. The train jerks forward as it leaves the station. No one moves. Darnell tilts his head, his fingers tapping against his knee. He studies Robert for a moment, then chuckles under his breath. It's not a nervous laugh, it's something else. A challenge. The other passengers are watching now. A man a few seats away lowers his newspaper. A woman in the corner takes out her phone, pretending to scroll, but not really, looking at the screen. There's a shift, a silent agreement that something is happening, something no one can ignore. Darnell shakes his head, exhaling sharply. He spreads his arms out, his palms up as if to say, "What's the problem?" His voice is still smooth, still relaxed, but there's an edge to it now. He glances at Emily, then back at Robert. His smile fades just a little. Emily doesn't speak. She looks down at her lap, then back up at Robert. Something in her eyes shifts. Relief, gratitude, but also uncertainty. She doesn't know what's coming next. The train rocks again. The lights overhead flicker for just a second. The silence stretches thick and uneasy. Darnell clicks his tongue, then lets out a breath, shaking his head again. Then out of nowhere he laughs. Not a nervous chuckle, but a full open laugh. It echoes in the quiet train car, bouncing off the metal walls. Robert blinks, his expression unreadable. Emily tenses, confused. And just like that, the energy shifts again. The tension doesn't disappear. It twists, bends, morphs into something new. Something no one expects. Darnell leans back, shaking his head as he laughs. It's loud, unexpected, cutting through the thick tension in the train car. A few passengers glance at each other, unsure of what to make of it. Emily stiffens, her eyes darting between Darnell and Robert. Robert doesn't move. He just watches. His face is unreadable, but there's a flicker of something in his expression. Curiosity. Maybe even suspicion. Darnell wipes a hand over his face, still chuckling. He exhales, then finally looks Robert in the eye. There's a pause, a long one. Before he speaks, his voice is different now, lighter, amused. He leans forward slightly, lowering his voice just enough so only Robert and Emily can hear. "Man, you really stepped in, huh?" The words hang in the air, and before Robert can respond, something shifts in the train car. The doors at the far end slide open, not at a station, but mid-ride. Several people step inside, all carrying small cameras. A woman in a headset gestures to someone behind her, and suddenly a voice cuts through the air. "Cut! That was perfect!" For a moment, no one moves. Emily's mouth falls open. Robert blinks. The other passengers stare, confusion spreading like wildfire. The people who just entered move with confidence, as if they belong there. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the pieces fall into place. A man in a black jacket steps forward, clapping his hands together. His voice is bright, excited. He looks at Darnell, then at Emily, and finally at Robert. "Got exactly what we needed. That was incredible." Robert exhales, tilting his head slightly. He looks back at Darnell, who grins, shaking his head like he can't believe it worked. Emily, still frozen, finally finds her voice. "Wait, what?" The cameras, the crew, the sudden break in tension, it all clicks together. Darnell stands up, stretching his arms as he laughs again. He reaches out, shaking Robert's hand firmly. "Man, you played that perfectly." The train is filled with murmurs now. Some passengers laugh in relief. Others shake their heads, realizing they've been watching something staged. Emily blinks rapidly, still processing. Robert, however, just smiles. He looks around at the hidden cameras, at the crew, then back at Darnell. "You guys got me." The train car buzzes with murmurs and scattered laughter. Some passengers shake their heads, amused, while others sit in stunned silence, still piecing together what just happened. Emily stares at Darnell, her mouth slightly open, then looks at the camera crew. Her shoulders slowly relax as realization sets in. The fear, the tension, It was never real. Robert exhales, running a hand through his hair. He lets out a small chuckle, shaking his head. He looks at the director, then back at Darnell. There's no anger, no frustration, just curiosity. He lifts an eyebrow, his voice light but steady. So this whole thing was fake? The director grins, nodding enthusiastically. He gestures toward the small crew, still capturing reactions. Darnell spreads his arms out in a half shrug, his usual smirk returning. He looks at Robert, then at Emily. His voice is playful, but there's something genuine in it too. Had to make it believable, right? Emily lets out a breath she didn't even realize she was holding. She places a hand on her chest, shaking her head with a half laugh. Relief washes over her face, but there's something else too. Gratitude. She looks up at Robert, her voice softer now. You really thought I needed help? Robert nods. No hesitation. He glances around the train, seeing the way people are still watching, still absorbing what just happened. The weight of the moment lingers. He turns back to the director. So what was the point of all this? The director steps forward, folding his arms. His voice is warm, but there's purpose in it. The whole thing was an experiment, a way to see how people react when they witness something uncomfortable. Do they step in? Do they look away? Robert nods slowly, taking it in. He looks at the passengers, some of whom are still avoiding eye contact. Others now seem embarrassed, shifting in their seats. A woman in the back clears her throat, finally speaking up. If you hadn't stepped in, I don't think anyone else would have. Robert lets the words sink in. He exhales, looking back at Darnell. Then Emily. His voice is quieter now, but firm. This kind of thing happens all the time. The train slows as it nears the next station. Darnell grins, offering Robert his hand once more. This time, Robert shakes it without hesitation. Emily smiles. The tension is gone, replaced by something lighter. As the train doors open, Robert looks at the camera. His voice carries one final message. Next time, don't wait for a superhero. Step up. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. See you later with another twist.